Hello, this is my race report for the Great New York 100-mile/100-kilometer running exposition held on Saturday 22nd of June 2024. It was an extremely hot day, not what I was hoping for. I struggled a long way, so this race is going to be more of a recap of the troubles I had and what I've learned from this race. For this video, I've decided to go through a list of things that worked well during the race, and things that didn't go so well, and things that I can learn from and hopefully improve in future races. I want to say thanks to the race organizers and the aid station volunteers for putting on this event. It was fantastic. They did a great job. It was an amazing experience. I'm very glad that I did it, even if I didn't get the outcome I wanted. Some of the things that went well, number one thing on my list was food and feeding. I made a plan for carrying all the calories I thought I would need, and a schedule for eating them as well. So my plan was basically to eat in 100-calorie increments, and that's reasonable to do, as things like goo gels and other kind of foods are typically kind of around the 100-calorie mark. So that's a convenient unit. And I would try to eat about 100 calories every 24 minutes. This works out about 250 calories an hour of food, but also means that I'd be eating 5 times in every 2 hours. This is the strategy that I followed in my previous race, the May Apple 50 mile. That worked very well in that race, and it worked very well in this race too. I carried a variety of foods with me. I had goo gels, Cliff blocks, a couple of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for early in the race, and a lot of M&Ms as well, which I've been trialing as an alternative source of food. I found that quite nice. Mostly sugars and a little bit of fats. But typically on a hot day like this, the chocolate melts a little bit inside the shell, so they tend to be quite easy to chew and digest. The second thing that went well during the race was the early race pacing. And as you can tell, I've kind of split this into 2 parts. There's going to be a later race pacing that didn't go so well. So my plan was to pace this effort by heart rate, as I'd done in the previous race. And that went very well for the first 4 to 5 hours. I was able to keep my heart rate in sort of a 150 to 160 beats per minute range. Which was better than I achieved my previous race, where after 2 to 3 hours or so, I was speeding up a little bit and was up more towards about 170 BPM. But I was more successful here. I was able to keep it in a good range, and that worked well for the early hours of the race, where the heat wasn't too bad. I think that was the right approach. Beyond that, things didn't work so well, but I'll cover that later on in the video. The third thing that worked very well was my anti-chafe strategy. So I'd used an anti-chafe salve on my feet and upper body in areas where I tend to get some rubbing and chafing with my camelback. Typically on my shoulders, it's a bad area where the straps are kind of most tight around me. I was particularly worried that, given this was going to be a very long run and also a very sweaty run, the anti-chafe wouldn't last and I would have some pretty bad issues there. But thankfully, I didn't have any issues whatsoever. No chafing problems, no blisters on my feet either, so my feet were in excellent condition after the race. So that couldn't have gone any better. I even carried some extra anti-chafe and a drop bag in case I needed to reapply, but thankfully it worked great. And the final thing that worked very well during the race was kind of staying on course and finding my way around the whole course. If you watch any of my previous videos, you know I've been training on the course itself, so I knew most of the way and was able to navigate most of the day by memory. But where I struggled a little bit, there were course markings, small arrows on the ground that pointed at every turning. So thank you very much to the race organizers for doing that. The course markings were excellent. And it was always reassuring, you know, whenever I reached a point that I was a little bit unsure of, that, you know, I could look down and find a small yellow arrow on the ground pointing the way. So that was great. There were only a couple of occasions where I took a wrong turn, and in both of those occasions it was because I thought I remembered the route, and I took the wrong turn rather than the course markings themselves being wrong. Thankfully I realized my errors pretty quickly, so I was able to find my way back on course relatively easily. Now on to the things that didn't go so well. On top of this list is managing the heat, and in fact all the things on this list of things that didn't go well will be revolving around managing the heat on the day, and relating to overheating and, you know, running in these kind of temperatures. I've been training in the heat of the New York summer, and done several runs in similar temperatures in the weeks leading up to this race. But all of those runs were, you know, shorter, up to maybe 4-5 hours max. So I did not really train with the degree of dehydration that I'll be feeling on the day, and managing the heat and the temperature and the hydration needs for such a long time. And I think that inexperience really showed on the day. It peaked in the middle of the day at around 93 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 34 degrees Celsius. And in fact, in some of the areas where there's so much, in the built-up areas, the concrete and tarmac really radiated heat on you from all angles. So it felt even hotter than that. So it really was suffocatingly hot in the middle of the day, and some sections, some of the built-up areas were really challenging, and I just didn't have the experience or really the plan in place to handle that heat and the stresses that places in your body for so long. I think it's ultimately what prevented me from going the full distance on the day. So for point number 2 of things that went wrong, and this is really kind of the first sub point in terms of managing the heat, it's the pacing strategy that I had for later on in the race. From about hour 5 onwards, the sun was out, and it got very hot. My heart rate started to rise about 160 to 165 beats per minute. And I thought this was okay at the time, but in hindsight that was too high, and I should have slowed down sooner to preserve my energy, reduce my rate of sweating, and cool down a little bit. The plan that I had in place really did not recognize the increased demands of my body that the heat would have, and I didn't slow down anywhere near enough to make it through the hottest part of the day and kind of survive to the later miles. What I had hoped was, based on my heart rate based pacing, was that, you know, so long as I kept the heart rate in a reasonable range, I'll be able to sort of maintain that pace throughout the whole distance. And I think perhaps in ideal weather and ideal temperature levels, that might be right. But in these kinds of temperatures, that was just the wrong approach. I think the body just cannot maintain the same heart rate when it's very hot and it's kind of struggling to keep the core body temperature down at a reasonable level. So I should have been targeting a lower heart rate, maybe sort of 140 BPM, would have been the better and more sustainable approach. Thirdly, there was the issue of hydration. So I carried a 2-litre Camelback with me, and also a half-litre bottle that you can see in pretty much every shot in this video. I filled that bottle with Gatorade at each aid station, and that was, the aid stations were approximately every 5 miles. My plan was to drink about 1 litre per hour, so that would involve emptying the half-litre bottle that I was carrying, and also about a quarter of the Camelback between every hour. So that means I would empty the Camelback every 4 hours or so, and then ideally fill that up at an aid station, or occasionally stopping at 7-Eleven to buy some Gatorade. Thankfully, the aid stations were very helpful and were very well stocked with water and Gatorade, so I never needed to make extra stops at 7-Elevens. I think ultimately, I don't think I hit the 1 litre per hour mark. I think I was closer to 700 to 800 milliliters fluids per hour, and I think that took its toll over time, especially as things got hotter. I think I suffered from not drinking enough. I had read that the body can digest up to about 1 litre of water per hour, and anything beyond that is kind of just extra fluid sloshing around your stomach that your body cannot digest or cannot process any faster. In these kind of conditions, I think it's better to aim at too much water than not enough. So I needed to be hitting that 1 litre per hour mark more consistently to kind of stave off the dehydration as much as possible. And I just wasn't doing that. I wasn't focusing on drinking more and slowing down to allow myself to drink more as early and as often as I should have been. The final thing that didn't go so well in the day was cooling. So this is the other aspect of preventing dehydration, is staying cool and minimizing the amount of water I'm losing through sweating. And I didn't do a good job at all of staying cool in these conditions. Firstly, my pacing was too high, so that meant that I was kind of generating more heat and increasing my body temperature and the rate of sweating. Secondly, I didn't take advantage of the cooling that was provided at aid stations as much as I should have. The aid stations frequently offered me with ice, or if they didn't have ice, they'd have sponges dipped in cold water that you could cool yourself off with. I should have made use of those more often and taken longer at aid stations to cool off. So one thing I should have been doing is stopping to put ice in my Camelback and carried that with me as I ran. That would have two beneficial effects. Firstly, the water that I was drinking would have been much cooler, and secondly, so the water in my Camelback would keep me cooler and help me survive the hottest hours throughout the day and kind of survive into the cooler evening. Unfortunately, I didn't capture much footage after mile 45. I went through an intense rain shower around mile 50. My GoPro got completely soaked and stopped working at that point, and I was worried that it was broken. Thankfully, it started working again after the race, so it may have just been a problem with running out of battery or running out of space on the memory card. But I was able to recover all the footage from the race. I was struggling for the last 10 miles or so, up to about the 100-kilometer or 62-mile point. My legs were feeling dead. I had just succumbed to the heat and exhaustion, and it really wasn't my day. I didn't have the energy to push on. I felt like I was ready to quit the race about the mile 50 and 55 mile aid stations, but thankfully the volunteers there were excellent. They motivated me to carry on, and I was able to find a little bit more energy to push on, reach that 100k point, and at least get a finisher's medal for the 100-kilometer race. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching till the very end. And thanks again to the race director and the aid station volunteers for putting on a fantastic event. It was a great day, even if it wasn't the result I wanted. It's given me a lot of experience that will hopefully make me a better runner in future races.